My girlfriend cheated on me with a rapper. Me and my girlfriend, male 26 and female 25, are a big fan of a rapper. I won't share his name as I don't want to give anything away. Back in February, we were both going to one of his shows, but schedules and shit meant that I couldn't go, but she could. I sold my other ticket and she went by herself. She texted me nearly the whole time she was there, telling me what songs he was performing, etc., saying she wasn't having any fun without me. Which sucked, but in a weird way, kinda made me glad that's how she felt. Like me not being there made it not as fun. When the show ended, she texted me saying that her phone was on 5% battery, so she was going to turn it off, and she texted me when she got home. 4 hours go by before I get a text, which I thought was odd because we only lived an hour from the venue. I eventually got home from my thing and we hung out for the whole night. However, over the last few months, things have gotten weird to say the least between us. Jokes she would laugh at now piss her off. Date ideas get thrown out. Lack of communication. Flash forward to last night. I caved to my paranoia and started looking through her phone. I searched my name in her messages to see if she had been saying anything about me. Surprisingly, it was mostly positive. Talking to her friends about me, how I was trying to make things work despite her reluctance. I then started to look for words that could maybe imply something had happened. I searched sex, and a text showed up that read, he wanted to have sex but there wasn't any condoms, so I just left. Which confused me because me and her hadn't used those in bed since we first started dating. Scrolled back a bit and realized that she was texting her friend about being taken onto the tour bus of the rapper and giving him head. My stomach fucking sank. I scrolled back through her pics and found a pic of her and him posing together. Nothing sexual, but in the hidden was a video. I didn't watch the whole thing, just the first 3 seconds, which showed enough to know what she was doing. I put the phone back where I found it and started contemplating on what to do. I left her a note and said that I was just going to go to my parents' house for a couple of days. I'm still in shock and I have no idea what to do. I want to divorce my wife over her hair. Our little girl's wedding was back in October and it was a fucking disaster because of my wife. My wife and daughter had got into a fight before the wedding, seemingly made up a few days before, so we flew down there and we were going to stay until after the wedding. When we got there, my wife started complaining about her hair. My daughter was suggesting a few of the salons around New Orleans that would have fit her in before the wedding. My wife asked her if she would just do her hair. My daughter has her beauty license. My daughter agreed and that's when the disaster started. My wife's hair was too warm, then too cool, then too warm again. My daughter had done her hair 3 times in a row, 6 hours each time, because my wife has a lot of hair and was wanting to be foiled back to back. Don't know if I phrased that right. My daughter said that she couldn't do it again for the 4th time because she didn't want to overprocess her hair and that her body was killing her. She said something about becoming burnt out from her nursing job, her hair job, and now all of the wedding planning and running around. This 3rd appointment was the day of her wedding, by the way. And before it started, my wife said, don't take another 10 hours to do it. My wife became very short and snippy with her and complained about her hair the entire time. She kept sending my daughter pictures of hair colors that she liked and telling her she colored it too gray and cool. My daughter was in tears at her wedding because she said her feet were blistered, so it was hard for her to walk in heels she had purchased for her wedding day. Her husband gently asked us if we could go home the day after the wedding, and I of course agreed. I was continuously telling my wife that her hair looked amazing and to leave our daughter alone, but she just kept saying, this is her job. I snapped at her after the 2nd appointment and said enough is enough. I also learned that my daughter had spent over $400 just on product for my wife's hair. My little girl and her husband make enough to sustain themselves fine and live comfortably, but I know that after their wedding, they wanted to tighten their belts and start saving up for a house because they plan on trying for kids soon. After the wedding, my wife had completely blown up once we got home, saying her hair was a mess and she was going to have to pay a lot of money to get it fixed. She texted our daughter and ripped her ass, saying what she wanted wasn't hard and that she's completely destroyed her hair. Our daughter just replied that she's sorry and hasn't talked to us since. She sent me a happy Thanksgiving text and told me that she loved me, but she hasn't talked to her mom since that text and she only keeps in regular contact with her siblings. I am so beyond pissed off. She had worked hard, coming off a 16-hour nursing shift and immediately doing her mom's hair for 6 hours and then 2 more 6-hour appointments back to back, and my wife was still ungrateful. This is not the woman that I married. This isn't the mother that I know. If I have to hear about her precious hair one more time, I'm going to leave because no hair is worth her relationship with our daughter. I told my sister she doesn't deserve her husband. I, 27 female, got into a huge fight with my sister, 30 female, last week, and honestly, I can't tell if I was out of line or not. My sister's been married to her husband, Mike, 32 male, for about 5 years. They also have a little boy who's 3. Mike is seriously one of the nicest, most hardworking people I've ever met. He works long hours to provide for their family, and on top of that, he still comes home, cleans the house, and takes care of his son. The problem is, my sister doesn't seem to appreciate any of it. She doesn't work, she doesn't clean, and she barely spends time taking care of their kid. Most days, she just lounges around watching TV or scrolling on her phone. It's not just the lack of effort. She constantly makes fun of Mike in front of other people, like at family gatherings or at parties. She'll joke about how he's too uptight or can't sit still because he's always cleaning up or organizing. She acts like it's funny, but I can see how much it hurts him. He tries to laugh it off, but yet you can see it on his face. He's miserable. I think he stays for their son and because he's the kind of guy who would just never walk away from this family. But it's obvious his situation is wearing him down. The breaking point came at a family dinner last weekend. We were all sitting around, and Mike got up to clear the table after everyone had eaten. My sister made another one of her stupid jokes about how he can't even sit still long enough to enjoy dinner. Everyone kind of chuckled, but I just snapped. I told her in front of everyone that she didn't deserve Mike. I said she treats them like garbage while he does literally everything for her and their son. I said she should be ashamed of herself for how little she contributes and for constantly making fun of a man who works so hard to keep their family together. The room went dead silent. My sister's face went bright red, and she started screaming at me, calling me jealous and bitter, and saying I have no idea what I'm talking about because I'm not married. She stormed out, and my mom immediately started yelling at me for airing dirty laundry in front of our whole family. Afterwards, my younger brother quietly told me that he agreed with what I said, but that I shouldn't have done it so publicly. Now my sister isn't speaking to me, and my mom thinks I owe her an apology. But I just can't shake the feeling that someone needed to stand up for Mike. I know I might have been harsh, and maybe I should have handled it differently, but I just couldn't sit there and watch her humiliate him again. So, am I in the wrong? Was I wrong for walking out on Thanksgiving dinner because my ex-fiance showed up? I, 27 female, ended my engagement to my ex-fiance, 29 male, last year after catching him cheating on me with a coworker. It was a humiliating and devastating experience. I thought I could rely on my family for support, but my mom, 55 female, was oddly neutral about the whole thing. She said things like, everyone makes mistakes, and are you sure you weren't just overreacting? As if I didn't see the texts and photos with my own eyes. Fast forward to this year. I've moved on and I'm in a healthy, loving relationship with my boyfriend, 28 male. He's not wealthy like my ex, but he's loyal, kind, and hardworking. My mom, however, hasn't hidden her disapproval of him. She once told me, he's nice, but he's not exactly husband material, is he? And made comments like, your ex could have provided you with such a comfortable life. I brushed it off because I know my mom can be superficial, and I didn't want to let her ruin our relationship. Thanksgiving rolls around, and I was excited to bring my boyfriend to meet my whole family. When we arrived, I immediately noticed a familiar car in my driveway. I thought, no, it can't be. But when we walked in, there was my ex, sitting at the table, laughing with my siblings like nothing had happened. My boyfriend looked at me, confused, and I felt my stomach drop. I pulled my mom aside and asked what he was doing there. She said, oh, I invited him. He's practically family. I reminded her how much he hurt me and pointed out that I had brought my new boyfriend. Well, your boyfriend isn't exactly Thanksgiving material, is he? Ex-fiance belongs here. She said it loud enough for my boyfriend to overhear. I told her that if my ex stayed, we were leaving. She rolled her eyes and said, don't be dramatic. It's not like you're still dating him. Be an adult and get over it. At that point, I told my boyfriend we were leaving. My mom yelled after me, accusing me of ruining Thanksgiving and embarrassing her in front of an important guest. Now my family's blowing up my phone. My mom, of course, is playing the victim, claiming I humiliated her and that she only invited my ex because she thought it would help heal old wounds. Am I in the wrong for refusing to pay for my sister's college after she threw my toddler? It feels so unbelievably obvious, but literally everyone keeps telling me that I'm in the wrong and I feel like I'm going insane. For context, I'm 34 and my sister 19 has been staying with my family while she attends college because we live very close by. We were paying for everything because my husband and I make much steadier income than either of my parents. And we have enough savings together that it just makes more sense for us to pay for my sister rather than my parents, who helped pay for both me and my husband when we were both in school. In return for charging her no rent, feeding her, and paying for college, all I occasionally ask for her to help me with is my 22-month-old son. It's never for longer than an hour max. He adores her, so it's much easier to hand him off to her while I try to clean up. She doesn't mind because I usually pay her something like $10 to $15 when it's any longer than 15 minutes. Please understand, this is never, absolutely never for longer than an hour. I understand that she has studies and most times would rather not deal with him, but I always ask if she minds, and whenever she says she's busy or not right now, I always listen and try to find some other way to handle him. Something I have warned her about repeatedly is not to have necklaces, bracelets, earrings, hair clips, etc. when she's taking care of him. Anything that can be pulled or taken off. This is because he has a tendency to pull and play with them, which I know can be painful. Both me and my husband have tried repeatedly to discourage this behavior, but he is still a toddler, so of course it's challenging. 2 days ago, I had to run an errand and it had seemed inconvenient to take my son when he was taking a nap. I asked her if she could watch him while I went, and she said it was fine. Before I left, I noticed that she was wearing one of those really thin plastic headbands. I told her it could be dangerous, especially with how thin it was, but she said that if he woke up, she'd take it off and put it out of reach. When I came back, I heard both of them screaming and my toddler wailing. I saw my sister holding her ear and yelling at my toddler while he laid on the floor crying. I was furious. I grabbed him and saw that his head was bleeding. I immediately assumed the worst and called 911 and an ambulance. When the ambulance did arrive and I finally got a closer look at my sister, I could see it was her ear bleeding. Both of them were sent to the hospital. Apparently what had happened was that my son had woken up after I left. The two of them were playing together on the couch when she got distracted by something on her phone. When she looked away, my son took her headband and poked it into her ear. She had apparently thrown him onto the ground to get him away from her and stop him from poking her any further. I was still furious with her for obvious reasons. While thankfully the bleeding was just a large cut he must have gotten when he fell, the doctors say he fell so hard that now he has a concussion. The headband apparently damaged my sister's eardrum, however, and now her hearing is damaged, which I'm sure I'll feel worse about when my emotions aren't so angry. We pay for all of our hospital fees, of course. Obviously, my husband and I told her under no uncertain terms that she was going to have to move out and that we will no longer be paying for her schooling after the semester is complete, but we will not be pressing charges or pursuing legal action, which the paramedics had explained that we could do. The problem is that now, several family members are saying that we were treating her too harsh. My parents are saying that we should forgive her because it was an accident and that I shouldn't have trusted her with my son to begin with since he isn't her responsibility. But if she didn't want to take care of him, she could have just said so. It's not like she's an irresponsible teenager. She's a grown adult capable of, say, restraining a toddler if they grab something that they shouldn't. I don't think that I'm an a-hole at all, but literally everyone in my life is acting like I am for expecting my sister to do the bare basics of keeping my son safe when I ask her to. Am I in the wrong for kicking my parent out and saying this is why I was so effed up as a kid? I had my parents over for dinner this weekend in their 60s, and after my daughter, 10, asked if she could play us a song she had been practicing on her keyboard. She gets lessons. It wasn't perfect, few missed notes, a couple pauses, but she did really well. She looked up at the end, massive smile, and I started clapping, and my parents started fucking laughing. Not just a little chuckle, a massive fucking belly laugh. My mom asked if it was her first time playing it, and my dad said it had to have been. A dog could have played that better. It was like my daughter was shrinking on the spot, and she looked down and said, "No, I've had 2 lessons, but doing it with 2 hands is hard." And they just laughed even fucking harder. I just stood up, took their cups, and said, "Leave. Now." My mom tried to say how they hadn't finished their drinks, they wanted to hear another song, etc. I said, "Get your stuff and get the fuck out of my house right now." My dad started doing this huffing thing he does when someone dares to speak up to him, and my mom said there was no need to be like this, that I can't protect her all the time and she was preparing my daughter for the real world. I said, it's not teaching the real world. They're just nasty little bullies picking on children, and shit like this is why I was so messed up as a kid. Now leave. They got their stuff and left. I sat with my daughter and explained how proud of her I was and how well she was doing. To ignore them. They were just being cruel because they don't know any other way to be, and asked if she could please play it again, which she did. On Sunday, I messaged and said until they can behave like decent human beings that we're taking a break away from them. My dad replied that it was my choice, but he didn't realize he raised me to be so precious. Now, my lovely brown-nosing golden child of a sister is getting involved. She phoned me today with my parents' version of events, telling me I was a nasty piece of work and should never speak to my parents that way, that I'm wrapping up my child in cotton wool and blah blah blah. I just told her to go F herself and hung up. I'm not asking if I'm in the wrong for standing up for my daughter. I'll always do that. But I did go pretty 0 to 100. I kicked them out straight away. I swore at them in front of my daughter, and I did raise my voice at the end when I said leave. I was and still am angry. I don't think I'd even accept an apology from them at this point. This behavior isn't new, it's decades old. But this is the first time it affected my daughter. Did I go too far or react too much? Am I in the wrong for telling my friend to stop mentioning pictures my wife posts? I've got a friend who the last couple of years has turned a bit tatey. He's been wronged by a couple of women in the past couple of years. One left him and got married within 3 months, the other stole a lot of his money. But he seems to have a particular dislike for women selling content or just generally being confident in how they look. That point brings me on to my wife. She's 39 and we've been together since school. She's a very fit and attractive woman, and her main hobby is pole dancing. She loves it and has been doing it for years. She's really good and she loves it so much. It's great to see her really excelling at something and being so passionate about it. She posts a lot of pictures and videos of herself pole dancing on accounts that only her friends can follow, so it's not like she does this for attention. Even though I've told her if she ever wanted to, I wouldn't mind, as a few of her friends have quite big followings, and sometimes when they do shows, my wife is in the photos and videos and gets a lot of positive comments. Over the weekend, I went to my friends to help him with some DIY, and he asked me if I mind my wife posting what she posts. I said not at all, it doesn't bother me. He then said, "You're part of the problem. Women are getting too much ego, and it's bad enough when it's single women, but married women shouldn't be doing that." I told him that if he's bothered by it, then don't look and unfollow her. He said that he won't change anything, and it's the culture being created around women getting validation for their bodies, or some shit like that. I got a bit wound up at this point and asked him if he'd like me to ring my wife and tell her himself. He said no, he was just talking to me man to man, and I need to grow a backbone. I told him that I'm not the one with a backbone problem. If he can't handle a bit of flesh and gets offended by it, then he's the weak one. I ended up leaving, and a few mutual friends have said while I was right, he's going through a hard time and is a bit vulnerable to this way of thinking. I personally think that's BS, and we need to tell him that he's heading down the wrong path. Me and my friend are both 41, by the way. I forgot to mention that. So, was I in the wrong?